So in chapter 268 of Kengan Omega, we saw Kanoh Agito's vast improvements. His three sides, Formless Martial Arts and Formless Plus Martial Arts, similar to chapter 92 where they discuss it. Now, my initial belief about his improvements and how he would grow stronger is that he would use formless and martial arts simultaneously so he would gain the best of both worlds with neither of the drawbacks of the two. But he kinda has that already, to be honest. We saw that in his fight with Jirota, that he basically can use them at the same time. Now, in regards to Formless's adaptation and evolution, Shen did say that Oma is approaching the human limits of how strong you can get as like a regular person. And Oma and Agito should be relatively close to each other when it comes to the strength. So, if Oma is approaching the limits of how strong regular people can get, then Agito should be as well. So, that can be a theory that he has stopped evolving because he just can't evolve any further. But Jan's comments how Agito is much stronger now than back when they fought in the hotel, and so that kind of disproves the fact that Agito has reached the limits of how strong he can get. I mean, he is a kilogram heavier now after all, so that must account for something. Evolution just takes time to set in. We saw that against Gao Lang. It didn't happen instantly. It took time to build up until he actually evolved and constructed a new anti-Gao Lang fighting style. As it stands now, you can always improve in some way. You can always evolve as a stronger fighter in some way. That makes more sense to me. You don't just reach a limit. Now, another theory that I've heard, and I believe in more so, is the fact that Kanoh has now perfected his formless, just like Lu Tian's formless went deeper than Agito's at the time. As Kuroki comments, Lu Tian was like a perfect spear against Kanoh's two flawed swords with formless and martial arts combined, but then that would more so be referring to Ashura Kanoh than current Kanoh. And this would make sense because attention is drawn a lot to the fluidity and the liquid movements that Kanoh is performing now against Julius, which would indicate that it is deeper, it is more refined than it used to be. But Lu Tian wasn't really more fluid than Agito in their fight. They were pretty equal in my opinion from looks. But that could just be a drawing thing, and Agito has dived even deeper than Lu now in the current story. Now, the theory I think is most reasonable is the one that Agito has combined formless with the water kata of the Nico style. Specifically, the technique Oma used against Cosmo, where he became literally like water and very slippery. We already know that Agito knows the basics of the Nico style. They were taught to him by Nico 6, aka Tiger Nico. And Fei did something similar to Waka, where he dispersed his punches with the redirection and water kata combined. And Waka is basically equal in strength to Julius, so this would make sense. The only thing you could bring up that maybe is a problem is the fact that Tom Mudo's Waki, aka water, works in the same way. He limps and disperses damage from punches and kicks, etc. But Goteter is an anti-limp and anti-redirection punch. Like, it works against that. We saw it how Toa couldn't disperse it, he couldn't redirect it. Lu Tian also comments that he couldn't limp fast enough to mitigate Kanoh's hits, so that is something you could argue to debunk the fact that this is water kata combined with formless, but it could just be that Kanoh is just so good at it that even an anti-redirection, an anti-limp punch can be limped by him, which would be pretty crazy. I also wonder if it really is just formless deeper, because it he doesn't have the normal shit-eating grin, like the demonic smile that he usually has when using formless. So, to me, I wonder if it is just formless. It would make more sense if it's formless and something more. For me, to be honest, I'm predicting that it's gonna be a combination of the water kata dispersion, like Tomudu tried to do, and a deeper formless, because that would make the most sense to me, that it's both. Because while I think I'm a bit disappointed that all are turning to the Nico style to get stronger rather than coming up with something else, it's the one that makes the most sense to me, that it is both Oma's tactic he used against Cosmo combined with the deeper formless. That is what makes most sense, in my opinion. As for the parallels that I've noticed while reading this match and this chapter, is I noticed a lot of similarities between this and Julius versus Wakatsuki, where Julius is very cautious due to he being wary of his fighter's abilities, and also kind of underestimating them. I also noticed the similarities that Kanoh targeted Julius's leg and kicked him, which kind of reminds me of how Wakatsuki was defeated by Kanoh, since he fucked up his ankle, which also brought me some ideas and brought me back to Akuya versus Hauro and how he targeted his knee a lot, which eventually caused it to just snap and give in. And while Julius isn't as heavy as Hauro, he's still not small. I mean, he's over 200 kilograms, so that could also be a tactic of beating him by just beating on his leg until he just can't stand anymore. I will say this, I'm not a huge fan of how nerfed the Dragon Shot seems nowadays. I know that Julius is a lot bigger and stronger and heavier than Lucien, but when you compare the impact of the two, you can't help but notice that it feels a lot less nowadays. The impact isn't as great, even if you take into account that Julius is a lot bigger and tankier than Lucien. Something I also must note is, after reading this, I noticed a lot of similarities between Kanoh and Venom from Spider-Man, to be honest. They're both tall, black-clad figures, and now he's got this black oil almost covering him. And he has these fluid, liquid movements like a symbiote. They both refer to themselves as we, and they both have that wicked, like, devilish, shit-eating grin. So, I don't know, it's just something I thought about while watching this and reading the chapter. I'm of course rooting for Kanoh in this fight through and through. Nothing against Julius, of course, he's really badass himself, but I just really want Agito to win this whole tournament. And yeah, so peace out.